Welcome to this Skillick Explains video, and welcome to video number 4 in my Key Pensions Question series. This is the last one, but I've left one of the most important questions till last, which is, will I or will you run out of money? Now, no one has an answer to that question. Hopefully the answer is no. In fact, some people cook it the other way too much. They leave themselves almost with too much money if they're in that position. But that's the question I want to answer here. Now, it's a common concern. State pension rules could change at any moment, so it's probably unwise to rely fully on those staying as they are. The final salary schemes are dying out. That was the old-fashioned generous style of pension where an employer sort of guaranteed a certain amount every year, index-linked if you were lucky. So most people are relying on money purchase, as it's called, or defined contribution in a self-invested personal pension or something similar. And there, the actual size of the pot is unknown until you actually crystallize it, if you like. So there is a degree of uncertainty, hence the question, will I run out of money? Now, what can go wrong then? Well, what can go wrongs are some people may be already regretting the decision to dial down or stop work too early. It's tempting. The pandemic triggered a lot of that kind of behavior, but actually, as the economic backdrop toughens, perhaps that's one mistake for some people. Overspending is another one, so underestimating how much not having an income from an employer or self-employment is going to cost you, if you like, and or drawing down on, let's say, a managed fund, if you're going down that route rather than an annuity. See the last video for more details on that, drawing down too quickly. So let's look at some ways of making sure we don't run out of money, all right, rather than focusing on potential for doing so. So first of all, boosting the pot to its maximum value. Are there some ways that while you're building up a fund, you can boost it? Obvious answers, slightly cliched, include saving for longer. Some people do defer their ultimate dialing down a work date because that increases the amount they're likely to get, because the time horizon inevitably gets shorter. Saving more is another obvious solution, but a hidden way of doing it behind there is salary sacrifice. Salary sacrifice, if you're able to do it, enables you effectively to get a gross benefit for a net cost. In other words, you give up a certain amount of income, an employer boosts your pension contribution, but you actually get a disproportionate boost compared to the amount of income you've given up, thanks to the way the mechanism works. Then there's, well, I've built the biggest pot I'm going to, how do I make it last? So how do I make sure I don't run out of money, draw down too quickly? Well, obvious things include doing forecasts, working out, and this may require a conversation, a bit of help, working out, what it is you want to fund during life after work, how much it's going to cost, whether all the phases of life after work are going to cost the same, because some people find they spend a lot in the early phase, less in the middle phase, and more later as care costs kick in and so on. So monitoring that drawdown rate. Is 4%, if that's the drawdown rate, correct? Does it need to be flexed up or down? Getting good at just budgeting, understanding how much income you've got, what your expenses are. That's not something we just do while we're still at work. It's a skill we should master and then carry on in life after work. And then there's, do I go down the annuity route? So would it be sensible to blend my approach? Is there a fixed period over which an annuity might serve my purposes better than being purely in drawdown? Now, this also sounds a bit depressing. I'm saying to save more, be careful not to run out of money. There is some good news here. Once we actually dial down work, some costs will drop away. Less so if you work from home as a result of the pandemic. But, commuting costs drop for a lot of people. Frankly, dressing up for work drops away. All those incidental daily costs of going into the office. I worked out, I fritter away something ridiculous like £20, £25 a day on random coffees, lunches, heaven knows what. Some of those drop away. You also find that you get allowance increases, all right, personal allowances, for example, for income tax. Discounts start kicking in once you hit certain minimum ages. So it can be less expensive to fund life after work than some people fear it's going to, certainly on a day-to-day basis, all right? But it still needs planning, all right? In other words, you've still got to think about how you map life after work, because that may include leaving something for heirs as well as funding your requirements. So why am I talking about this now, if you like? Well, key questions include, what sort of runway am I looking to provide income over? In other words, can I carry on working, or am I going to be forced to stop at a certain point? Because that will influence the amount that you save. What can I be doing instead? If I give up work, have I got a plan? Do I know what's going to come next? Or am I just going to stop and hope that I suddenly develop lots of interest I never had before? That might be unrealistic. What reaction is me giving up work going to have? So in other words, if you're planning how long you carry on working for, have you spoken to other members of the family about the strategy? As for the golden rules, if you like, that frame these kind of thoughts, at the end of the day, prioritize health over wealth. Some people go too far the other way. They make sure they'll never run out of money. They make sure they leave lots behind for their heirs, but actually they forget that most of that hard-earned capital should be there for their benefit, not just other people's. And you don't want to leave it so late you can't actually enjoy some of the wealth that you've built up. So there's a balancing act there. Expect the unexpected. What I mean by that is, don't be over-optimistic. Markets can change, okay? Annuity rates can change. Be ready. Make sure you are positioned for uncertainty as much as you were before you stopped work or dialed it down as afterwards. Aim to be self-sufficient. In other words, aim to give yourself enough flexibility, enough independence when you hit life after work, not to be relying on other people. And as part of that, put your own life vest on first. And what I mean by that is sometimes people get carried away with the idea of funding their children only to find out later they need to go back to those same children for money, for care costs, whatever it might be. So prioritize what you're going to need before getting too carried away with passing wealth through future generations. Okay, now to find out more about all of those topics, because I have covered them elsewhere to a degree, Killick.com/learn, and the tax effective savings tab is one place. The guides, there's one sitting next to me, but it's not that one. There's a nice grey guide, quite a chunky one, about generating income once you dial down work. That's not a bad place to go. Covers some of the risks I've mentioned here. And then our quarterly magazine, Confidant, usually has a conversation involving the planning team at Killick, if you like, around some of these quite tricky, quite subjective issues, to which I don't, I'm afraid, have a magic solution. And that, again, is editor at Killick.com.